Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to cover how to pull down Git changes, specifically with Ploi, but you'll probably be able to use these instructions to figure out a different server. Maybe you're on Laravel Forge or something. It should be roughly the same process. So firstly, this is assuming that you already have SSH connection established to your server so that you can get in and start to change things. If you haven't already got this sorted, then check out some of my earlier videos where I talk about how to do this. So let's talk about why you would want to do this. Why would you want to SSH in your server and pull things down? Now, there are a few different situations in which you might be running Statamic. Firstly, I guess as I am right now, is you might have a personal site and you might be the only user logged into Statamic. In which case, the normal, workflow might be to do something locally in Statamic, maybe change some content, then commit it to Git, push it up, and the server would then push those changes to your production environment. And that's what we had set up in the video where I talked about how to publish a Statamic site. And that's the way I normally work when I'm working on my personal site. However, there may be an occasion where, let's say, you didn't have your own computer, but you just wanted to log into a public site, the live site, and make a few changes, and then maybe we'll pull those changes down to the local environment when we get back to our computer. Alternatively, maybe you've got a second user and you want to pull those changes from the production server down to your local machine. And here I've just SSH'd into my Ploi server. The first thing to do here is to type ls, which stands for list, and then if you type -l, which is a modifier flag, I find it a little bit easier. What this does is it lists it in a single vertical list. So just to show you, without the modifier flag, it lists them going across. Of course, I've blurred these out for confidentiality, but if we type ls-l now, you can see it's in a single list, and I find this a little bit easier to read. So once we've got a list up, what we want to do is go into our site folder. And just while I'm here, I wanted to mention that this is a whole lot easier if you have a pro license for Statamic, because what will happen with the pro license is Statamic's flavor of Git will actually bundle all these changes for you and automatically push them up to the repo. So you won't need to do this. This is more if you have the solo version and you want to do a manual pull down. So I'm going to go cd and then my website. And then if I go back to this list argument, I can see all the files here. So this is kind of what you would see if you were in an FTP GUI program, a list of all the files. So you don't need to actually run these list commands. This is just to show you what you're looking at for the sake of the video tutorial. Now what we're going to do is say git status. And at this point it says it's up to date. And this is because I've not changed anything on the production environment that will need to be pulled down yet. So what I'm going to do now is log into my own site, make a tiny change just to test this and show you what happens. And what I'll do here is maybe I'll just change this from I'm to I am. Save it. And then if I go back to terminal and try git status again, you can see that Statamic has now changed the markdown file and this is marked as a modified file. So what we want to do now is we want to do our usual git stuff. So git add, and the full stop just adds anything, git commit -m. I normally just say content changes for this. It's like an all-encompassing term. And then we need to git push. And at this point, we'll run into some kind of error like this, where it's not able to push back to Bitbucket. Now, the reason for this error is because if we go through the default wizard that Ploi has, so if we say git install and then Bitbucket, and then we select a repository here, what Ploi is doing is adding this using what's called the Oauth Protocol. And the problem with Oauth is by default, it will use HTTPS to communicate back and forth with your provider like Bitbucket. This is fine, but if we're, for example, using Statamic's Pro-Git integration, where it pushes back to the provider like Bitbucket, this needs to be in SSH rather than HTTPS. Also, if we're logging into the server, just as we did then, we also need to be working with SSH rather than HTTPS. And so the solution really is not to use this default wizard that Ploi provides. We instead need to click custom. And when you click custom, it'll give you an SSH key, which you'll need to add to Bitbucket or GitHub. So just to show you an example, I'm going to copy this here. Then you go to Bitbucket, bottom left, personal settings, then select SSH keys. And you need to add a key here. which will be this thing that you just copied. And you can call it, Ploi production server, and then maybe a dash and the name of the server. What you'll then need to do is, typically this will be blank, this repository field. You'll need to add which repository you want to link up manually. This is pretty easy. We just go back to our Bitbucket project, and then if you go to try and clone this, it will give you a command. And what we want is the actual address after this, so this address here. So I'm going to copy that, and then you'd paste that in here. And you can see it looks the same as this example below. And then you go ahead as normal and make sure install composer dependencies is ticked, and then install the repository. And once we've done that, if you SSH back into the server and go to the folder or the directory, and then I say git status. Okay, let's add this again. Content changes. Now, if I say git remote and then followed by a V flag, which means verbose, you can see here the fetch and push addresses are both SSH. So if you did this previously without going through this manual process of adding the git repository, what you'd see here is HTTPS followed by a long address, but now we've got this as SSH. And now if we git push, you can see it's got no problem doing that. And if I open a new window, then cd into my local installation of my site, cd blah, 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 then say git pull, you can see it's pulled down this small change I made to the homepage markdown file. And that's it. So that's how to pull changes from a Statamic production site on Ploi when you're using the solo license rather than, let's say, the pro license, which is a lot easier. We still need to get this running through Oauth though, like we've done. But Statamic Pro takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting in the back end. So there you go. We're becoming a sysadmin master. You are the pan.